We are going to move on to our final speaker. I will give our audience just a bit of a heads up that even though we are here in 2020 having a conversation about innovation, our final speaker is having internet challenges. So we're going to see how this goes, and we have a plan B if we're struggling to keep the connection live. But I really hope that we are able to make this work, because she is absolutely a superstar here certainly in the Canterbury innovation ecosystem. I first came across her through her work at University of Canterbury, trying to drive programs to get innovation going there. And she is probably the most tenacious person I have ever met. One of the most patient people in terms of navigating bureaucracy to find where we're going to get the money and the resources and make this amazing thing work. And as a result, she now has a CV that includes being the founding director of ThincLab Canterbury, director of the University of Canterbury Centre for Entrepreneurship, UCE. She has done a massive amount to grow the capability of our founders locally and the impact of their ventures globally. Rachel, I am going to start with the same question I've given everyone. What do you see as the unique strengths of New Zealand's startup ecosystem, and why will those strengths be key to thriving in a post-COVID world?
Well, thanks, Carla. I'm really hoping I'm actually visible and moving. It's been a frustrating hour. I think actually an answer to your question first up is that like right now I'm quite frustrated, and I've got a serious internet issue, and I'm actually, after this, it's actually been 2 months and it's been fine, and of course right now it falls apart. And so now I'm like, okay, I've identified a serious problem. I want to fix it. How can I fix it? What can I do? What can I innovate? What can I start? And that fundamentally should be what we should be all doing, is, do we experience a problem that's really frustrating and embarrassing? And if so, can we go out and solve it? So if we all went off and did that, we actually would come up with lots of excellent solutions that would be useful for us all. So getting back to the question, for me, I'm actually going to focus a little bit more about young people. I think it's just one area that we haven't covered here. For me, the thing that's unique about New Zealand is our people, particularly our young people, and particularly the generation that's coming through. So I do a lot of work, obviously, at the university with sort of 18 to 30-year-olds. And in the last 5 years, I've been amazed at the dramatic, it's actually quite dramatic change in their view of the world, and actually their generosity to the world, and how they want to make a difference and make a positive impact, have purpose and have reason for being. So I really think it's important for us as a nation, particularly now, where everything's changed. This is a great opportunity for innovation, how to leverage these young people and their tenacity to want to make a difference. How do we take that and actually channel them into ways to basically change our nation and change the world? The thing I love about working with young people is, anything's possible. It's great, there's no barriers, there's nothing. So, even though we're talking about how a number 8 wire is a negative thing, in some ways it's a positive thing, because we do innovate, we do come up with solutions for problems like the one I've got right now. But our issue is actually, how do we take that from the solution that we've generated for ourselves and actually get it out there into the world? So I think there's a lot of ways that we can sort of leverage the inherent nature of our population, our young people that are coming through, to actually innovate and actually create interesting businesses. The other thing that I want to sort of bring up is that for me, New Zealand is an excellent testbed. For a start, our population is really amenable. I mean, it's amazing. What other nation can give 2 days notice, you're all shutting down, you're all going home, and we all obey? I mean, seriously. Other nations had to have guns and all sorts of mechanisms and really change up the police. But here we all just went home and we just sat at home for a few weeks. It was amazing. We're very amenable to try new technology. So it's a great place to test stuff. You know, I think one area that we should be really looking at, and it's sort of following on what Melissa and Rachel have been saying, you know, we could be the nation moving forward around sustainability and climate change. It's a great place, a great environment to test a lot of things. And other area to look at is aerospace, and I completely agree with Melissa. Food, fibre, ag, it's sort of in our genes, it's in our nature. These are really interesting areas to be thinking about. And I think I just want to sort of finish, sort of following on from Rachel. I really hope post COVID-19 that we create a world where it's prosperity for all. I'm quite concerned that we could end up with sort of a bit more disparity. I'm looking at young people and the people I'm working with. There's a lot of fear with them right now about what are they going to do? What's their future? What's their employment? Because now they're going to be competing with people with a lot more experience. So this is, I'm sort of encouraging them, like, okay, well, think about, you know, starting a business, innovating, looking at what's around you. You don't need to go into a world thinking it was what it was like in February, because it's not. You can go in and start something new. So I think it's something that as a nation we need to be really conscious of. The world that we want to create now needs to be better than the world we had back in January. So I think I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. We got 99% of that. There were only like 1 second here and there where we froze. So we're going to keep going because this is really incredibly valuable stuff. So one question that I have for you, and do feel free to leave your video off. We can do this as a conversation instead. One question that I have for you is, you know, you say that young people are, you know, afraid of what their future looks like. And one of the things that we know is that when we are coming from a place of fear, there is a very natural human tendency to want to, you know, become insular, to hunker down, to go into protective mode. Are you seeing that the response of young people is focused on protection and survival, or are we able to encourage our young people to see this as opportunity? And I think this is some of the work that you're doing. What can we be doing to help young people see the opportunities here rather than go down into survival mode?
That's a really good question. Interestingly, during the lockdown, I actually saw young people become paralyzed. Which I thought was quite an interesting thing. Even though they had a huge amount of time, they were stuck at home, they almost reverted to doing nothing. But then they started going, hey, wait a minute, you know, look, we can do this or that. So I think it's important for us to actually tell them that it's, you know, things have changed, which means there's actually more opportunities than what there was before COVID-19 in a valuable way. I think they sort of feel like, you know, you've obviously got the leaders and the people that normally will be out there and be really innovative, but for sort of more average young person, I think it's important to tell them that it's okay to think differently. It's okay to try new stuff. It's okay to take risks. And that's actually what New Zealand needs for them to be like that. And I should actually add another thing. So over the last 2 months, I think education, I think Rachel touched on a wee bit as well. This has been a really great opportunity for education institutions to rethink how it's educating its young people. And over the last 2 months, the business school, which I'm part of, we've spent a huge amount of time re-looking at our programs, going, okay, what can we change? What can we add? What can we do to help these young people for the future of work, for these young people to be the innovators of our future, and to contribute to startups and growing SMEs. So I think it's a really exciting time because it's actually forced educators to rethink actually what it's doing and flipping everything on its head basically overnight.
Yeah, awesome. You mentioned that at the beginning of this, you saw young people becoming paralyzed. I think we certainly, I don't think it was only young people, right? So many of us became a little bit deer in headlights. Like, what do we do? Oh my gosh, the whole world has just been turned on its head. We've got a question that's come through, I believe, from Facebook, which is about the fact that you work mainly with folks 30 and younger, and how can we support or encourage older people to get involved? I guess potentially different framing for that question is, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from working with young people that could be applicable to anyone, regardless of the generation that we come from?
The thing is actually take risks, and failure is okay. I think that's something that New Zealanders, US are great at that. I mean, they think failure is like, gold medal type stuff. We need to have more of that. We need to take more risks. We need to try stuff and accept if it doesn't work, that's actually not a reflection on you. It's just a reflection on that didn't work, so try something different. I think that, so we're looking at, I'm looking at how we can at the university and with it in the centre put together some programs for what we call adult learners to actually help them sort of just get over the initial sort of fear and just get on with it. If more of us did that, a lot of it will fail, but that's okay. You learn a lot, and it actually adds to the ecosystem.
Yeah, awesome. That basically every time we fail, we've learned another thing that doesn't work. So one of the things that I've been reflecting on is the fact that because our context has changed so dramatically, our local, our national, our global context has changed so dramatically, it's my belief that our innovation sector, our entrepreneurship sector, our startup sector is actually the most critical engine for where we're going to go from here. And the reason I say that is because if everything has changed, we have new problems to solve, or new new customers, new supply chains, new ways of looking at things. We are going to need new approaches in order to address those things. So I guess, number one, what is your take on that? Number two, how can we effectively invest, support, nurture our innovation and startup community and sector so that we are best equipped to respond to the challenge?
So actually, I would what I'd love to see, and it's sort of following on from what Dave was talking about, we create what I'm calling a circular economy of entrepreneurship and innovation. What we need to do more of is successful entrepreneurs, successful investors actually give back even more and make sure that they're contributing to the people coming through and mentoring them and helping them. Because fundamentally, if we want to really be successful 5 years from now, we need more capability from young people through to 70-year-olds. And one, we can learn a lot from people that have been there, done it, and have been successful. We need to understand that innovation doesn't necessarily have to happen in startups. So innovation should be happening in all companies and people, big or small. And I think the CEOs of medium to size to large companies need to be looking at how they're innovating, what they can do to change, how can they build new capabilities to do that. And I think getting back to my point before, one of the frustrations I actually have with the startup ecosystem in Canterbury at least is people are too scared to go, nah, that startup didn't work, I should stop, end the company, and then start a new one or go and join a new one. Because what happens is if you just keep sort of plodding along and you're still 2-minute noodles 5 years later, because you just won't give up that startup, you're actually not recycling your capabilities into something that could really take off. So I think it's important, and we should be accepting. It's okay to go, okay, I tried that startup, it didn't work, right, I learned the stuff, I'm going to start a new one and cycle back into something different.
Yeah, awesome. So really maximizing that return on learning. I will just say, Rachel, that coming back full circle to one of our other panelists, it reminded me of when I first met Melissa Clark Reynolds, was because I attended a talk that she gave. There was a group of maybe 15, 20 women. We were all sitting around a giant U table. Melissa was at the front of the room. She gave her talk, and then we had to go around the table and each of us say kind of what our backstory was. And it got to me, and I said, "Hi, I'm Kyla. I've started 3 companies, and they've all failed." And her reply was immediately, "You need to start another company right away, because that is the kind of learning we need to keep in the system. You can't take all that learning from having those companies that didn't work and just go and get a job somewhere." So, that concept of really cultivating not the failure bit, and I don't think any of us likes failure, but cultivating the learning bit, and how do we then turn that learning into something positive that comes from it. We have a question here. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, it's normally your second or third or fourth startup that's successful. It's pretty rare for it to be your first one if you're the founder.
Yeah, exactly. David McDonald shared a great comment, which is about the Graham Dingle Foundation doing a fantastic job of reaching 17 and 18-year-olds. He's one of their mentors. So that's just a note for those of you who have tuned in that to check out the Graham Dingle Foundation. It's pretty fantastic. I've come across it previously. Rachel, one final question for you. In addition to noticing that successful founders tend to have had kind of 2 or 3 goes at it before they figure out what works, what other attributes or common characteristics or features have you noticed from the young people you've worked with who have achieved some success as entrepreneurs?
Probably 2 things: sense of purpose, sort of understanding why and what they're doing, and probably the other main thing is actually a sense of urgency. So startups aren't a 9-to-5 job. Startups is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week. It's a hard slog. It's up and down. So if you're going to treat a startup as a 9-to-5, forget it. It's not going to work. And you're not going to be as successful as you could be. You could have a great idea, but if you're just treating it as a sort of part-time job. So to me, it's the initiative and urgency, and just again taking risks. Like, it's okay to try to call up the CEO of some company. I'll just give an example. One of the students a couple of years ago, he was probably the best salesperson I've ever seen. He was only 18. He was like, "Okay, I think I've got a really great idea for IKEA." He actually emailed the CEO of IKEA, and you know what? The CEO of IKEA called back and set up a conference call with this kid. And he actually got some quite big work through him. So, you just got to give it a go. But if you sit there and you're too scared to actually cold call or do stuff, you're not going to go anywhere. So take some risks.
Awesome.
That's what I'd recommend.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rachel, we are just about out of time. Again, I could talk to you for hours, every one of our panelists for hours. This has been such a stellar morning for me. I hope those of you tuning in have gotten as much out of it as I have. I want to give a huge thanks to every one of our panelists, to Marianne Johnson, to Melissa Clark Reynolds, Rachel Tolele, Dave Moskowitz, and Rachel Wright. A huge thank you to Ministry of Awesome and Boma New Zealand for hosting this, to MYOB for supporting this. Thank you to all of you who tuned in, who shared your questions, your kind words, and your insights. Have a wonderful morning. Kia kaha, kia maru, kia atawhai. Be strong, be calm, be kind. Ka kite anō. Take care.